Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today I am chatting with Shona Schwartz, whose recent book is called Always On, an interactive parent's guide to the disconnected generation. And that is right up our alley here at Scrolling to Death. So welcome, Shona.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to chat with you. Well, you're also a mom of four, more importantly, and you worked in education for nearly 2 decades, which we could probably have a whole conversation about the education part of it, but I think we're going to stay off that for today. How old are your kids now?
Yeah, so between 5 and almost 14.
Okay, you're in it. This is exciting. Okay. Let's start general for now. What are you most worried about when it comes to our kids and technology?
So a little bit, I'm going to preface this a little bit by talking about the evolution of the book.
Okay.
One of the things that I had the advantage of when I started having children is that I had been in the classroom for many years before I had my first child. And from the day I walked in, I remember the first school I worked at was in 2009 where they had one-to-one laptops, right? And that was all the rage and it was so exciting. They were such a progressive school and my students' eyes were glazed. I mean, the glaze over their eyes was so evident from the interaction or the lack of that was happening in the classroom. And immediately it became clear to me, right? They're gaming, they're chatting, they're instant messaging each other. What we call today the attention anxiety of being on a screen. And so I did a lot of backtracking, reestablishing norms. I did a lot of things like pulling my 6th graders off computers, which was, really jarring. And there was a lot of pushback about it, which, we could get into a little bit later when we talk about some of the detriments of screens. But we really pulled back and we started to start from the beginning, right? How do we learn? How do we be learners?
Yeah.
And so when I had kids, limiting technology felt very natural to me because I had been in the thick of it for a while. When I think about my biggest challenge today, though, it is answering the question, how far can I limit it? And how removed can I keep my children in the face of the growing reality that they are regularly the only ones? And I have to balance my belief about their well-being and my job as their mom for their well-being with the reality of being a teenager in 2025.
Right.
And I always tell people that I am not a zero screen family anymore. We used to say that. We are no longer a zero screen family. And at the same time, my kids don't have regular screen access.
Right.
The thing that's most on my mind is how do we manage? How do we find strategic support and strategies to manage this ongoing, never-ending balance of both protecting our kids and knowing where the lines are for them to still be sort of in their worlds, whatever their worlds might be.
God, there's such a spectrum of families and choices related to screens, and a no screen family is really limited, but you can be a total low screen family with just a movie once a week or once a month, or you can be a low screen family and watch a movie 3 times a week, in my opinion, but you're not giving them direct solo media access. And so it's fuzzy. And we're going to get into today different ages and phases and recommendations for parents. But I want to ask, because when you said you entered the school system in 2009, and you saw just immediately the glaze on the children's eyes, that those screens were not good for them, that the distractions were too great. Why have we gotten so far? What is your opinion on, we're still pushing it?
Yeah.
Why didn't all teachers rise up together in 2009 and say, no, this is not working well?
So I can tell you that the conversations were for sure happening in the classroom just as they are now.
Okay.
I think there were a few things that were really challenging to push against. Number one, if you're paying private school education or you're in a school district that prides itself in being wealthy and progressive, and they were doing the one-to-ones, right? To stand up and say, we're not sure how we feel about it was not really a space that was open for conversation. I'll never forget when I stood up in front of the 6th grade parents at our private school and I said to them, at back to school night, I want to let you know that until January, students don't go on their computer in my history class. The pushback was so fierce. Now remember, I'm this young teacher. The parents did not appreciate it, but I came armed with research. I came armed showing parents that their children couldn't summarize a basic passage on the computer, but they actually did a fairly good job doing it when I printed out an article.
Wow.
Or I showed them research that showed that if I gave their children a small task to go and research something online, their kids would regularly be, Googling, clicking between tabs, finding unreliable information, chatting with a friend. But the moment I gave them a book, even think like an eyewitness book or National Geographic, something they might use in history class, and ask them to identify and summarize and even analyze some specific information, we were able to develop the skills probably within 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
And so when I would walk parents through that, I would give them a lot of examples. I would say to them, take out a book on whatever it is and ask your kids some questions and then send them off on the World Wide Web, right? I love using that expression sometimes because it highlights what the internet is, right? The World Wide Web.
The
Just
world.
send them off
Yeah.
and see what happens. And so I definitely, the amount of pushback I got. So to your question about it is, I think it's hard to stand alone. I stood alone. I had incredible administration that supported me when I started to show them what was going on in my classroom. Not everybody has that. And I think, and I don't want to say this in a judgmental way about educators or parents,
Right.
but I think a lot of adults really appreciate what we might gently call engagement or not so gently called babysitting of screens. And I think it's really hard to take that away. If I tell you as a 6th grade teacher that you cannot use internet for activities or for research, your first question probably would be, so how do my students complete research? And I used to make my students go to the library. In 2012, I made them go to the library, right? Or sometimes I would print articles for them. But there were a lot of more challenging workarounds that I needed to do that I think many adults, educators, parents can find challenging.
Okay. And interesting, your experience was parent pushback. They wanted the screens. And I do think that we've shifted to parents are very, very concerned about the screen time and the distractions, the substandard education through the screens, and that they're being forced on kids in TK. And so I have a side organization called techsafelearning.org with lots of research that parents can browse about what's going on with those screens at school and how you can just engage in conversations with your school.
Yeah, I want to say one thing
Yeah.
that might feel difficult.
Okay.
As a principal, I would say those parents were still in the minority. Meaning when you say there's greater awareness, I think that's true. There is greater awareness, but I still found that the majority of parents really pushed a tech heavy environment.
Okay.
They still were asking questions like, how are you teaching our kids tech? Are you doing coding in the classroom? And I'd say, well, research, is not so clear on whether or not these children's coding programs, right? All the work that you probably could share as well.
Yeah.
And not everybody was on board.
Okay.
So I think we still have a little bit of a ways to go till we reach that
Yeah.
tipping point of parent, education.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think you can't go it alone. I just got off the phone with a parent from the Los Angeles Unified School District yesterday, and he has a group of up to 80 parents within the district who have all come together, are defining their strategy on how to get screens out of, they're trying through 5th grade. They don't want their kids on screens at all. And listen, that's going to be tough, but I'm like, go, please do it. And when you have 70 or 80 parents asking for it, that's quite a strong point you're making. From what I've seen, a lot of parents are leaving public school districts or homeschooling due to these issues that they're not able to resolve directly. So, okay, let's move off of school issued tech, which I could talk about all day. But parents who are listening, and even grandparents, have kids or care for kids who are all different ages. And I love that within your book, you have a chapter first for the parent or the caregiver, and then separate sections for the different age groups. So I thought we could spend a little time on each of those areas. And to start with parents, I love that you started with our own use. Your chapter 1 says mirror, mirror on the phone. Starting with mirroring, I find in some books, it's like saved till the end because it could get a defensive reaction. Like parents want to be able to, some parents may want to be able to manage their kids' device use without like thinking about their own use. But what do you want parents to be thinking about related to our own screen use?
Yeah, so I love that you brought up that most books put it at the end. I've had a few readers reach out directly and say, Shona, I bought your book, and I have to be honest, it's been sitting on my nightstand for weeks because every time I pick it up, you ask me to reflect on my own tech use. And it scares me, and I keep putting it down. I can't even get to the kids section. So it was a tricky balance whether or not to put it at the beginning. But like you said, it just seems like such an urgent call to action for
Yeah.
parents. I think the bottom line is they value more of what we do than what we say, right? If we're telling kids that devices are unhealthy and they're watching us scroll on Instagram, they're watching us be distracted, it really, really matters to them. I had a fascinating experience a few months ago. One of my children said to me, "What are you always doing on the phone that's so inappropriate?" I was
Oh,
taken
why would
aback
they?
and I said,
Yeah.
"Why would you think I'm doing something inappropriate on my phone?" And he says, "Well, whenever I walk into the room, you immediately put it down."
Wow.
And I said, "Because you walked into the room and I want to look at you."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was such a moment where I realized that they listen to our values, but they also
Mm-hmm.
really watch us.
Yeah.
They're noting, right? Is my mom picking up her phone and getting distracted? Is my dad, just looking at that extra, text that came in? Are
Mm-hmm.
my parents saying that dinner time is non-screen time, but their work is important and so they have to pick it up? And so I think that that becomes really, really important. The other thing I think is really important is, and I say this all the time, Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation, I joke. I say, he wrote about anxious generation, but I think some of the problem is that we're the anxious generation,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The parents who are in our stage of life, we
Mm-hmm.
started scrolling on Instagram and TikTok when we were just a little bit young parents enough to
Yeah.
develop some of that anxiety and that attention anxiety and the comparison
Mm-hmm.
cascades and the amplification and all the concerns. And then what is it doing to our ability to parent well as sturdy, supportive, boundary driven parents?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of
Yeah.
that is also very powerful to me. Like, I'm very honest. I love
Mm-hmm.
social media. I had it for a while and I deleted it. I fully got rid of all social media on my phone. And I don't have the apps, and occasionally I'll log into the website, right, when I
Mm-hmm.
want to have fun with it or download it on a vacation for a week or something.
Yeah.
But I don't have it because I noticed A, my children watch me, and
Mm-hmm.
B, I have the same sort of persuasive design coming at me that my kids do.
Right.
And
Totally.
so, what starts as a cute, let me make a nice salad for dinner turns into like everything in our house is giving everybody cancer. And I, start stressing and freaking out.
Yeah.
And so recognizing our behaviors and the way it's
Mm-hmm.
impacting both our mental health, our behaviors, our social interaction, and also our parenting
Mm-hmm.
is feels like a baseline place to start.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so funny you mention the anxiety of parents. I interviewed Laura Morton, who is a documentarian and a writer, and she has a documentary called Anxious Nation. And her whole point was like, it's not just this generation, it's that we've always had anxiety, and now we have super anxious parents making their children anxious. That interview comes out August 25th,
Amazing.
which will already be out by the
Listen
time this
to
airs.
it.
Yeah, so you mentioned you got rid of social media entirely and you dip in and out here and there on the computer. I also did that in 2020 after Social Dilemma came out.
Yeah.
And when I realized what was happening to me, I deleted Instagram, which was the only real platform I was active on. I think for me, it was like seeing other people living lives that actually aren't what their lives are like. And so you're scrolling through being like, just feeling icky because you're looking at something fake, and it just made me feel bad all the time. And I think that just parents reflecting on, do your sessions on social media yourself make you feel better or make you feel worse? And I don't know how many people are going to be like, I feel great after I scroll, and I have such an easy time putting it down.
Well, whenever I give workshops to parents, I always talk about persuasive design, right? They're not intended to make you feel better. If you felt better, you would take some, you'd feel really satiated, and then you turn off your phone. That would be terrible for the bottom line of tech companies.
Right. Yeah.
And so you have to feel just a little bit bad that you keep going back for more to help you feel better.
Yeah, because
And
that's what keeps you on longer, which is so
exactly.
weird. It's that sticky stuff is the inappropriate stuff, the violent stuff, the gross, sexualized stuff is stuff that makes you feel off. And that's even worse for kids.
Yes.
And kids are way more susceptible to it. Okay, I'm so glad we started with talking about parents and their activity on their phones. So let's move, though, to the early years, which you kind of bracketed as birth to 6 years old. What are maybe one or two big things that you want parents to be thinking about during these ages related to tech?
So I think one of the things that's really I want to highlight is that part of the goal of this book is for the everyday parent and the everyday child. I think it's easy for parents to hear stories about suicide ideation or predators or, right, some of the amazing people you've had on your podcast to talk about the really, really big concerns about screens. And for a parent to say, come on, my kid's a good kid. I mean, I'm just giving my kid my phone, when they're bored.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important to understand is that all those, let's call them more extreme dangers that come with technology, those are real and pervasive, and we need to think about them.
Yeah.
But before we even get there, right, well before we even get there, we need to realize the kind of cognitive, intellectual, social impact we're having on our kids when we hand them a screen. And the biggest example I give is any form of emotional regulation. Your kid's cranking at you. They're bored. They have to wait for their food to come at a restaurant. There's traffic. There's a long line. You're on the phone or working. They have to wait their turn. They got in a fight with a friend. Any of these kind of things. They wake up early in the morning, and you're right, you're still sleeping. All of these moments are not just opportunities, but essential requirements for healthy, functional development in children. And when we hand our kids a screen, we blunt their growth and development. That's it. It's super simple in the young years. And so, yes, while your kid can, get access to predatory content and dangerous content and can be fed, right, all of, well before you get there, it's super simple.
Yeah.
As a mom, do you think it's part of your job to help your kid be patient and be a little bit uncomfortable?
Yeah.
And learn how to socialize and learn how to get rejected from a friend and still socialize and learn how to share their toys and learn how to wait online and, right, just really basic functions that if you speak to any, 7th grade teacher or 11th grade teacher or parent of an adolescent, right, we know are significantly hurting their brain development.
Okay.
And so those are the questions you want to ask yourself. Am I handing my kid a screen in those moments of emotional dysregulation or discomfort as a way to blunt their capacity to develop and practice their ability for discomfort?
Okay, right. And I want to get real with parents right now because I know a lot of parents who wake up in the morning and their kid, or maybe their kids are up early, right, earlier than them, or the parent just wants to wake up and have a quiet cup of coffee. So that the cartoons are on. They're on in the mornings. So you're advising that parents should not do that.
Yeah.
I know.
The research, everybody says to me, they want me to give them a magic bullet, right? Here's a way to give your kids access to screens and also not have any damage. And whenever parents say that, I'm like, but that's not realistic. And the example I give to parents all the time is I say, imagine your kid woke up at 5:30 a.m., right? Kids do that. Trust me. I had my fair share of eras of that, right? Now imagine you say to your friend, listen, I have a solution. Every morning, I put out a bunch of sugar cereals and cakes and cookies and lollipops, and they have so much fun at this sugar fest in the morning. They don't wake me up until 7 a.m. Your friend would look at you a little funny, right? It's very nice that your child's entertained, but I'm wondering how healthy that is for their body and soul.
Right.
And I think that that's the same thing when we think about screens. They've become socially normative. And that's partially because they weren't as concerning and dangerous back in the day. But now that we know better, I know it's nice and I know it's an easy tool. And, right, this digital pacifier has really long-term detrimental impacts to our kids and our family.
And your kids will adjust, and not to, grandstand, but we don't do TV in the daytime at all. And I'm definitely not in the mornings. And my daughter wakes up at 5:30. And what she has learned to do is read a book or go color. And I'm not tending to her until 6:30 or so. And that's just the deal. And she's learned the skills to pass the time creatively.
Yeah, and I wanna add, this is where I think we're a little bit the anxious generation also. So we as parents have the capacity to be uncomfortable, sit with that feeling of being woken up and not being comfortable and figuring out what to do with our kid and putting, coloring next to our bed while we're in and out of sleep, dozing or half falling back asleep on the couch. Or if we have a partner to, have a plan with the partner about who gets up when. Do we have that capacity, or are we also always looking for quick fixes and quick solution and instant gratification,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How
Right.
do we
Totally.
self-assess there as well?
Yeah. Okay. And when you talk about brain development, that's something I had written down too, because it's very concerning that these choices we're making, which seem simple and harmless at the time, can affect the way their brains develop and look when neuroscientists like look at the brain scans. And a lot of damage can be done in those early years. Can we fix it? Can it be undone
Oh,
later
it's a good
on?
question. I think there are still some questions about what can be undone when there's heavy use 0 to 18. I
Okay.
do know that in the term, from a casual sort of observer way, I've seen it happen for many, many parents. I have a good friend who had a very, very behaviorally challenging 4.5-year-old son, very behaviorally challenging. And at about 6, she on her own, right? But it was a few years ago before some of this research came out. I love Dr. Victoria Dunkley and research. She talks a lot about it, right?
Yeah.
She said, I'm getting rid of screens. I'm getting rid of all screens. It was 6 months, she says, of agony because she had to readjust as a parent. She said her son's adjustment was faster than hers.
Wow.
Her son eventually readjusted within 2 months, but for her to always sit with the discomfort, to sit with the boredom, to sit with the restlessness, to sit with the cranking, whatever, to sit with the troublemaking creativity, whatever it was.
Yeah.
She said within 6 months, her child went from diagnosably ADHD to somebody who you would not have put in that category. He was so healed of so much of that, like dopamine access, attention anxiety, hyperstimulation, that obviously he was more susceptible to, right? He didn't have
Yeah.
that excessive screen time at 4, but he was obviously more susceptible to it.
Right.
And removing him from screens had a drastic effect. So do
Okay.
we know in the short term it helps? Absolutely.
Okay. And it really comes down to a lot of it is the parent's discomfort when you hand that phone at the restaurant or in the airport at the grocery store. You are feeling uncomfortable that your child may be being a kid, which is normal. And also you're like, I have to entertain them. But this is all part of being a parent. It's not supposed to
I
be as
know.
easy as that, right?
I know. Sometimes, like when I was writing that piece in the book about your kid gets to live in the world too, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I wanted to write
Oh,
like, it is not always easy to be a parent. Like,
yeah.
how do we emphasize that people have talked about parenting as challenging and there are challenging moments, and that's okay. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
something's wrong with your kid, it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It is part of the essential process of development for your kid. And I think that's really important. I have been the mom with the kid tantruming at Trader Joe's, and I've had to hold him screaming.
Yep.
And I had a lot of confidence in that moment when shoppers were turning and looking, right? I had a lot of confidence in that moment to know that I was doing right by my child
Right.
and I was being the best mom that I thought I could be. And what I've learned in speaking to parents over and over is that part of standing your ground and holding by your boundaries and values is really knowing that less screens is healthier and better for your children. And even though there might be some fallout from it, what we might call difficult moments, right? Your kid tantruming, your kid talking too loud in a library, your kid, dumping something in a store, in a restaurant. Like I've had all of this.
Right.
And I
Totally.
still know that I am being the best mom that I can be.
Yeah, right. I love that. And you're giving your children a gift. They're gaining so much from having limited or no access,
Absolutely. I mean,
right?
they know the librarians in our city. We don't live in such a tiny city, and they know my children by name.
Uh-huh, right. And my kids don't get to go to that computer screen at the library. Why do we have to have a computer screen? Except for to look up where the books are. But with the games, what are we doing? Okay, let's move to elementary years. So 6 to 11. Let's just start again with like what's one or two big things that you want parents to be thinking about during these ages.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is, and this is going to sound funny, but I think your kid's ability to be bored is a really, really big one. One of the biggest things that I hear when I talk to parents, by the way, I want to say emotional regulation plus. So emotional regulation of the younger years actually gets way, way more challenging in the elementary years. So I want to say plus because you'll be dealing with it as well. But
Okay.
the ability to sit around, be bored, not have a friend, have something go wrong, like all of these feelings are okay and positive and actually essential. And that's really important that parents know that your child being bored does not make you a bad parent. And your responsibility as a parent is not to entertain them. The second thing that I want to highlight, and it's been said a million times, but it bears repetition.
Yeah.
Any internet like connected technology that you give your child is exponentially more dangerous than what is happening in the real world. And it's so important that you really, really, really believe that.
Yeah.
Because when I let my 9-year-olds bike around the neighborhood themselves, and parents say to me, but what if? I say, right, and you're sending your kid on Roblox and Fortnite to talk to strangers. I promise I'm doing the safer thing. And I feel confident. I have the research to support me, right? And also my kids are developing. They're highly engaged kids in the world. They'll make, little backyard camps for the neighbors, and they make lemonade stands, and they make bake sales for charity. And sometimes I'm involved and sometimes I'm not involved. But this ability to sit without giving them a tech-oriented solution is really, really important for their well-being.
Okay.
And I just want to really encourage that. The less is more, even if it feels uncomfortable.
And I struggle because my kids are within these ages, and I still am not allowing them to have access, particularly video games, iPads, tablets, any of that. Because I feel like once you give a little, you give a lot, and you cause a lot of fights, and it's a constant struggle. And so for these ages, 6 to 11, would you encourage parents not to introduce any direct use of technology if possible?
That's a good question. So I talk about this in my book, and it has been the greatest system that I have used and coach parents in, which is a family blueprint. One of the challenges is that parents will say something like, I don't like technology. I don't want my kid to have a smartphone. I don't want video games, right? They'll make these declarations. But then in the moment, what happens? There's peer pressure. The parents may be going through a difficult time, either personally or medically or professionally, right? Something happens that causes a parent to what we might call give in. And then once that happened, the child understands, right? Basic parenting, that everything's up for negotiation. And then, you go down this really difficult rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So I always encourage families, maybe you do this once a year, maybe every 2 years, depending, right? If we're in our ages, I find it's evolving so quickly. Once a year is a good, a kind of a good timeline. When they were younger, I just did it every couple of years. We have a family blueprint. It's really, really clear. Here are our family rules about screens. And we're very clear and very consistent. I talk about in my book, the parenting tool I find most helpful is what I call the 3 C's. I communicate. I communicate our boundaries and the research. What are my values? What are our family standards and boundaries? What does the research say that supports our family's morals and boundaries and all these beliefs?
Yeah.
The second thing I do is I connect. There really are times that my kids are left out because they don't have screens. And so it's my job to say, what is the underlying need of my child in that moment that they're, feeding for those screens, and how can I meet it? And I always say, I'm not by nature a playing parent, right? But I have put myself out of my comfort zone to say, let's all learn card games. We got really into the game Spit one time, or what we call drug dealer, right?
Spit. I forgot about Spit.
Really fun games. My son got all of his friends into poker for a while because they were tech heavy. He didn't have a screen. Let's all come over and play poker. I put out lots of snacks. Be a snack mom. The kids will come over, right? There are times where we did family bike rides in the afternoon. Like, I know that sounds so idealistic. It's not. Kids fell and cried, and it didn't look as Instagrammable as it sounds. But when the kids knew that from 4:30 to 5 we do a family bike ride, okay, we have that moment of connection. Parents are putting away their phone. Mom or dad are coming, right? So there's just all of these moments that you really need to connect to say, what's the need and how do I connect? And the third one is consistency. When you are consistent, it is such a different story. There was a very powerful story that happened to one of my readers who shared with me. She said that her friend called her and said, it seems like all of the kids in the class recently got this video game. And my son said all of the kids in the class got the video game. And I thought in my head, I don't think this family has video games. So I'm calling you to see what happened with your son. Okay. This reader said, I didn't know anything about it. My son hadn't shared anything with me. So she went to her son and she said, do all the kids in your class have this video game? And he says, yeah, except for these 2 kids and me.
Yeah.
Most kids have it.
Yeah.
So she said to him, you never asked me for it. And he said, Yeah, because that wouldn't even be a thing in our house. Why would I ask you?
Mm-hmm.
And
Good.
this is
Yeah.
a third grader, right?
Yeah.
So, not a teenager, which is a different conversation, but old enough to recognize the values and the consistency that
Mm-hmm.
his parents followed through on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a very powerful story to highlight that when there are consistent values
Mm-hmm.
followed,
Yeah.
kids really understand. In our family, we have a blueprint. We have
Mm-hmm.
travel tablets that have very limited access. We travel a
Mm-hmm.
lot, so they're allowed on the plane and in airports. That's it. Then they go back in the suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
We are allowed 1 hour of shared screen time a week. So that's like one big screen in our living room.
Mm-hmm.
They have a variety of things they can do with it, all sort of pre approved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
That's it. I
That's
know
it.
that can
That's
be
it.
it.
So
That's
my
okay.
preteen got a phone this past year, which was a whole thing, a year and a half ago now.
Okay.
My next preteen, we actually did something a little bit different. We weren't so thrilled with some of our choices. We had to backtrack on a lot of them, which is a
Okay.
whole story in itself. But
Okay.
we actually decided we're getting a kids' family flip phone. And as
Perfect.
kids need it, if you go
Yeah.
out with a friend, you're
Mm-hmm.
coming home late, you're babysitting at a neighbor, you take it. But it's a family flip phone. So,
Yeah.
so this is all a process. But we have a family blueprint. We look at it once a year. We share it with the kids, and that's it. And so
Mm-hmm.
all of that negotiation, all of that, like, well, if I say no, then it will hurt our relationship.
Yeah.
It's not there.
Okay, amazing. I want to ask about here, like for these ages, outside influence, because a lot of times their friends will start getting phones or devices. And this has happened to me. I mean, we just started soccer and we showed up, and like 3 of the girls, 9 years old, have their own iPhones in their hand. And I'm thinking, oh God, I don't want my daughter
All
hanging
those
out and
dancing
like,
TikToks being put out into the
yeah,
public.
yeah,
I
like
know.
what are they going to show my daughter? And my daughter, it is one of those things where I've talked to her a lot about this and probably have like a family blueprint without having written it down, which I should start doing that. But my daughter knows that if someone starts to do something on the phone and try to do it with her, she's like, hey, I don't use phones, or my mom doesn't let me, whatever she says, but she changes the subject, changes the activity. That's not going to go on forever. There's going to be all kinds of exposures, whether it's at camps or schools. Or do you have advice for parents around that? We're trying to protect our kids, but it's all around them.
Yeah, so I think in sticking with the 3 C's, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes very clear because even something like what those boundaries are
Mm-hmm.
can evolve. So when my son hit 7th grade, for example, every single friend had Fortnite except for him. And so I shared with him that I didn't mind if when he went to friends, right? Which, it's a couple hours a week. What is it?
Yeah.
Most of the time he doesn't play. That was now allowed to have that access, but never, talking to strangers online. It can never be part of chat. So I'll give at different ages, I'll give different exceptions at friends' homes. For example, in my younger kids, I do not let YouTube or any internet access. My 5-year-old was going on a play date one time with a new friend, and I was cracking up. He said, Mom, did you text the mom that we're not allowed screens? You have to tell her, it hurts our brains. And I know that he's always on a screen. So can you text her before I go to tell her? So these are conversations that we have, and he knows, and he'll say, because it hurts my brain. My mom doesn't laugh because it hurts my brains. And so when
Yeah.
you're communicating the values, it's important. Now, I want to tell you that I had a 3rd grader who was exposed to violent pornography at a female friend's house. Okay, so this perception, it's only boys, not true.
Yeah.
It happened when the parents were home, and
Okay.
it happened on a personal device.
Yeah.
It was extremely traumatic, and at the same time opened the door to how do we have a conversation about why I think these connected devices are so dangerous and damaging,
Yeah.
right? And these are why we have rules. So that was a big learning experience for us. And we went from boundaries at friends' houses to this child asked for me to communicate with friends, no screens at play dates,
Yeah. No screens at
right?
play dates.
No screens on play dates.
And
That's
there's
it.
a way to communicate that to the other parent. And you give some examples in the book about that, which is really great. And God, that makes me so sad with the like pornography exposure that young. And I interviewed Kristen Jensen from Defend Young Minds, and they have a book series called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, which is just teaches your kid about pornography, because your kid's going to see it, and what to do when they see it, because kids are getting exposed at like 9, 10, 11 years old on average. And so
And here I am, right? The parent who wrote the book, who educated my kid, who had the boundaries, who did all the things, and it happened from the most unlikely place that I would have imagined.
yeah,
And so, this is part of that first C, the communicate.
yeah, absolutely. none of us are immune either. Like I know shit's going to happen to me that and my kids that I'm going to be shocked. It's like I've done everything right and I still no, it's happening to everybody. So
It's
okay,
like when we decided to give our kid a phone, right? And
yeah.
we made some decisions and then we had to backtrack on a whole bunch
Yeah,
of
totally.
decisions. And it's always evolving.
Yeah, and backtracking is a great point. Like you can always go back. I know it's hard, but if you've given your kid an iPhone, you're probably regretting it. So you need to go back and get them a flip phone
We
or a
should
bark phone.
we should spend a minute talking about resets, especially as we're thinking about the 6 to 12 age, because
Okay.
one of the biggest pushbacks I get from parents all the time is it's too late. 6 to 12 is too late. They've had iPads for this long or smartphones, and I always say to them, really, if you learn today that this is going to kill your kid, that
Right.
really feels too late, right? Like this is the sense of urgency and
Yeah.
acute urgency that parents need to feel is important because they need to backtrack with confidence. They need to be able to effectively and confidently communicate to their child, we made a bad, naive decision. And part of our job as a good parent
Right.
is to reset. And this is
Yeah.
what that reset's going to look like. And I always say in an ideal world, that reset is co-constructed with a kid. So a basic example would be my son, he has like a very locked, like technically a smartphone, but it's locked. So it doesn't have apps, YouTube, browser, right? Doesn't have any of that. And one of the things it does is it locks at 8:30 at night. He can do nothing but call on it. And I don't mind if he chats with his friends or right, he babysits. And we discussed what time it would lock. So that was something that we co-constructed together. I wanted 8, he wanted 9. We compromised in 8:30, right? So Saturday nights it's extended to 9:30. So wherever there is opportunity to co-construct those boundaries and resets, great. But also you're the parent and you know better. And it's okay to be the parent and know better.
Yeah. Is that smartphone an iPhone? Do you mind sharing, or is it a different type?
So we actually chose a Pixel because we have Pixels and it was much easier to create a sort of family parental control system. It's
Okay.
all set. So the phone, here's something else that we backtracked on that we never thought. My son only had WhatsApp, Duolingo, and Spotify in his phone. That's still all he has.
Yeah.
First of all, I learned so much about persuasive design from Duolingo streaks, but
Right.
we started to notice that the phone really started to eat into some of his being, like his whole being. He stopped reading, he stopped socializing as much, his eyes started twitching, like all these weird things.
Oh.
And so my solution to it was to limit the screen to 45 minutes a day. So it's a simple parental control on the Android system. And when his screen is on, so doing anything, including taking pictures, being on WhatsApp, 45 minutes, and then the phone locks. So technically it locks at 8:30, but if he exceeds that 45 minutes of screen time early, it locks. And what that means is that he uses it mindfully and intentionally. He used to like fidget on it all day and just hold it, and now he never does because it's accidentally locked. That's how much
amazing.
screen time. So that was like one of the most successful resets we did that I just want to put out there to parents. But sometimes there is an element of, trial and error and leaving those lines of communication open.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And because you mentioned Spotify, I just got a message today from a parent whose 12-year-old, no cell phone, no social media, no YouTube, except on the family TV in the common area. But she loves podcasts and she uses her school-issued Spotify account. But she recently alerted her mom that there's a new chat feature with anyone. And the parent was unable to block it because on a school device, they don't let you manage
So the other thing is that
settings.
there's a lot more videos on Spotify,
Yes, and
which is also
pornography.
a problem. Yes. So, okay, so this is the thing. It sounds crazy to believe. How long ago did my book come out? My book came out in April. Since it has come out, the amount of technological changes, like I always say my son had WhatsApp and now I'm not comfortable because it has Meta AI integrated. I posed myself as a 12-year-old girl, went and chatted with it. I mean, it's a disturbing chat that followed. And I screenshotted the whole thing. And now I'm like, well, what do I do? Like already he doesn't have Instagram and he doesn't have TikTok and he doesn't have Snap and he doesn't have Snapchat. I really, really need him to get off of WhatsApp because of Meta AI, but Meta, can you just put a parental control to stop the Meta AI? So, right, there's so much more integrated features. There's fewer parental controls. And so, again, these are really complicated issues that it's no longer like, make a decision, pick a vision, and you're good to go. It's really a lot of constant negotiation and reevaluation.
Yeah. And this Meta AI thing, a mom who has a 13-year-old just sent me screenshots from her son's teen account on Instagram. And as he scrolls through and he sees his, friends' posts and some fishing, football stuff, there's Meta prompting you to chat with AIs. And this one's name is Nasty Nancy. And that's Meta suggesting that to you. And this one has millions of chats already going on. It's like, okay, this is a teen account. I thought it was safe. So
sure, the answer is that my next kid is, like, I know this sounds crazy. My next kid's getting the flip phone.
Right.
So what we did was we were a little, we tried to be strategic. We got a flip phone and said, this is the kid's flip phone. And I'm hoping that next year, which is the age that my other son got a phone to keep in touch with friends. We go to a commuter school. It was just logistically important. He keeps saying to me, could that be my phone? Could that be my phone? And I have already established very clearly in my family that while we gave our kid a locked smartphone, with the changing technologies, that is probably no longer going to be an option.
Yeah.
We're going to have to rethink it for him, but we're definitely not going to make the same poor decision again. And we're planning to give our next kid a flip phone. So we got one in the house. He's comfortable with 100 taps for every little text. And we're kind of easing them into the fact that that's where we're going, because we are really having trouble keeping up on the locked smartphone.
Okay, and what brand of flip phone that is that? Because a mom this morning said she can't find one, and I'm like, they're all flip phones.
Okay, I wish I had it on me. I am going to need to tell you which one it is, and you could put it in the show notes.
Okay.
But we actually did go down a rabbit hole. We ordered many, including something like the cat phone, and my kids said, do you know that we can get the internet on this? And we couldn't block it. And there was a bunch of challenges. And my husband, who's in tech, is some of the filter, he's not so comfortable with. Okay. So we ended up getting a really simple flip phone that works just perfectly. But I would suggest that the Gab phone can sometimes work well for parents. Or I think you've had on maybe, I don't remember who you had on.
At Bark.
Yes,
yeah,
Bark.
And I'm just remembering there's a site called dumbwireless.com that has additional options. I see a Nokia flip phone there. And so it might be one of those things where you don't go through your service provider. You go buy the phone from the website, right? And then you can go to the store and have AT&T or Spectrum.
And something that also I tell parents all the time, like, it's okay to be clear that this is hard. So, for example, one of the things that I would encourage parents to say is, we don't want to give you a smartphone, and here's why. And we know that's hard for you. And we know that all your friends in 6th grade are getting a smartphone. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you a flip phone in 5th grade. We want you to feel good. We want you to keep in touch with your friends, but we can only give you devices that we know keep you safe. And so even though it sounds like, a little bribery of sorts, it's okay to recognize that they're missing out. And like, here we're doing something to recognize that while still keeping our commitments to be good parents and keep you safe.
And I just feel like they're going to be excited because they get access to something. It's their own device, like an adult. It doesn't have to be the whole world at their fingertips. They'll just be excited to text and get
And as my 11-year-old said it best, he said, I'm really upset not to have a smartphone, but because I never had one, I don't feel as bad because I'm excited about a flip phone. Yeah. So I thought that was a really, insightful perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to move on to teen years. So let's go with the most important thing you want parents to be thinking about for their teenagers in tech.
The most important thing to think about is that your kids will survive being exceptions. And I cannot overstate this. This whole pressure that parents feel that your kids are the only one may be true. And I'm not saying that your kids need to be zero tech. But I am saying that it's okay if all of their friends have Snapchat and you think Snapchat is dangerous, and so your kid does not have Snapchat. And the research does not support parents' argument that if they don't have Snapchat, they're going to go and do something crazy when they have access at their friend's house. That is not true.
Right.
I give the example all the time with food. It's like saying, we're going to be a junky food house so that when my kids go to their friends' houses, they won't eat all the junk. No, I can be a healthy house. My kids can go to the friend's house and they can junk, and then they can come home, and guess what research says? My kids will have healthier eating habits,
and
right?
They know that they'll know what feels better. The healthy food, you feel better.
Exactly.
The low tech life, you feel better than having.
I give this example in my book. My son once went to a friend, and he stayed the whole day gaming, YouTubing. It was so exciting. It was when he had entered 7th grade, and I loosened the boundaries a little, and he came home and cried. Oh. He came home and cried, and I said, what's wrong? And he said, I just wasted my whole day. It felt so fun then, but now I'm like, there were all these things I wanted to do that I didn't get to.
Yeah. Amazing.
And it's a very, very powerful experience. Again, it doesn't mean that your kid won't sneak a little at a friend's house and push some boundaries on a sleepover. Like, I just want to be clear, I don't have perfect kids.
Yeah.
But holistically, when these boundaries are kept and consistent, when we communicate with our kids and we connect with their emotional needs, they're still better off with less tech and they will survive. They will survive. I'm doing 18 for 18 with my kids. I'm giving them $1,800 to stay off of all forms of social media until they're 18 years old. So that's
Oh,
another
I've
thing I
never heard
call.
of that.
Oh, you never heard of it? Yeah. So
No.
it's supposed to
Okay.
be 16 for 16, but I pushed it to 18 to 18. It's a huge payout on my part. But the reason I love it is because I know as he's getting older already, he's kind of pushing. Yeah, I'm the only one. When can I? And I say, hey, buddy, remember the 18 for 18? It's like that little incentive that's keeping him going.
I love
It's
that.
not the reason. He has the
Yeah.
education, he has the values, but it's a little bit of a push when he doesn't feel great that he's the only one.
Yeah.
And he knows, I go to a friend's house, I can play some Fortnite, I can, see a video that my friend made within the boundaries. Like, for sure, there's some of that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he pushes some of the boundaries and doesn't tell me about it. Like, I want him to be a normal, healthy teenager and push the boundaries, right?
Yeah. Right.
But holistically, he has the values and I'm standing by them.
I love that. So $1,800 if they can get to 18 without having their own social media account.
Nothing.
Okay. Does YouTube count?
I don't let him have YouTube.
Right. Okay.
I think YouTube is basically turned into YouTube Shorts. And so
Yeah.
it's one of those things that old YouTube, I might have reevaluated. I hate the content in it. I just think it doesn't bring anything helpful. But with YouTube Shorts, it's a non-starter.
I agree. I think so. YouTube is social media. It has user-generated content. It has comments. It's an algorithm, which with the shorts really put it over the edge for me.
Exactly.
And that's amazing. I love that tip. I think too, the brain development thing here, like their brains are developing till their mid 20s. And this is also these young teen years is really important that they continue to learn their emotional regulation, how to feel discomfort, how to be bored without going to a device immediately, right?
How to like sibling rivalry and fight with their siblings. Like that's really important in the scope of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about, they go through some hard stuff in those teen years, like heartbreaks and things like that. And it just makes me think of like if they rely on social media to comfort them in those moments. And this is a harsh example, but Jenny DeSario, who I interviewed, her son Mason was searching inspirational quotes on TikTok after his breakup at 17 years old, and it served him a stream of suicide content until he literally took his life. And this is what and that's
that was the only story. But we
it's not. This is not an edge case. Like this is what kids are being served. This is how the algorithms work. Like they're not feeling good right now, right? So how do I keep them in that state to keep them scrolling longer? And that's messed up.
And I want to caution that it's not only social media. It's group chats. It's gaming. I think parents, often turn to social media as that, the be all and end all of what we need to avoid. But it's really a larger sort of category of what I just call screens, right? Because it's showing up everywhere now.
Yeah. And gaming is definitely something that will never be allowed in my home. I mean, and people will defend Minecraft all day long to me whenever I mention it on my platform. Like even the safer platforms are gateways to the more unsafe platforms like Roblox, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto, and from there on. But I also feel like they're experience blockers. Like, why are we plugging our children into a screen when they could be doing so many other things,
So
let
for
alone predatory issues
Exactly.
on these platforms?
And for us, that one screen, 1 hour a week has worked really well because it's like if they do want, my almost 14-year-old recently bought himself a Nintendo. It's a long story and I can go into it, but he did, right? And so, you can now plug it into that one screen and play it with your siblings at that one time. And these are the only games that are allowed. And so because we keep it to that 1 hour on the public screen, for us that sort of worked in mediating this balance as they're growing into teenagehood, but for sure keeping it out completely makes a lot of sense as well.
Because do you worry then about them sneaking it when you're not watching?
You know what, I don't worry about them sneaking it at all.
Okay.
I think that as he's gotten older, and the honest truth is he hasn't enjoyed that hour of watching, and he's just kind of been like over it, and I'm a little restless and I want to try something new, and like can I do Super Mario Racing and can I do FIFA?
Yeah.
And those felt like really safe ways for him to feel a little bit like he has access to some of that gaming in a healthy, very protected, boundaried environment.
Okay.
But you
Yeah.
have to know your kid. You have
Yes,
to know your
that's
kid.
what I
I
was
mean,
going to say.
one of
Yeah.
my kids has zero access to anything remotely internet connected in any way, right? It's just his personality is he will hack onto everything. He has shown me that my phone can do things that I never knew. Everybody has that kid, right? And then I have another kid who like completely cannot figure out how to send a text to the cousin when I need him to. So
Yeah.
you also have to know your kid, right? Are
Yeah.
they risk takers? Are they more curious?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Are they more addictive personalities? Are they more prone to ADHD like behaviors? Like you do really need as a parent to assess your kid. I don't think it's a one size fits all.
Absolutely agree. And I have one of those as well. And I had, we learned the hard way not to have these things around because he will sneak them.
Like old iPhones in a drawer, I tell everybody.
Listen, yeah, it's stuff
Dangerous
like
device.
that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, okay, then, to wrap up advice for parents here, most parents have multiple kids in the home who are, different ages and different boundaries and different rules. So how do you recommend that logistically we handle making sure like younger ones aren't exposed too much, or how do we deal with that?
So I'm just a huge believer in making sure that the exposure is not available to anybody. And that's really, really important to me. So when I tell you that my son has a locked smartphone, right, it has WhatsApp with his friends, like I said, Spotify, Duolingo, I know that even if one of my kids were to be in the room with him while he's accessing any of these technology, that would not be damaging for them. I personally would not let anything in the home or available that could create that exposure situation, because I just do think the reality is if it's around, they will be exposed.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they have the same rules,
Right.
but I do care about access to that kind of exposure that could be unhealthy or damaging.
Yeah. Okay. Deciding based on the lowest common denominator, and that's what we do when we watch a movie. It's like my daughter's 4.5, so we have to watch a movie that's appropriate for a 4.5-year-old.
And by the way, there'll be exceptions, right? Like maybe the 4-year-old has school one day when the 14-year-old's home, and like, isn't that a great time to play, some family, Wii Sports, and we can take it out because the littles aren't home and they won't start negotiating, and the big kids can understand that on a day off, maybe we can make an exception, right? So there's some of that too. Like that's part of being a good parent is negotiating that and recognizing the different needs for the different ages and space to meet them where they're at.
Okay, is there anything we didn't share regarding advice for parents that you wanted to touch on today?
No, I think we shared. I think the biggest thing is I want to encourage you, whether you're reading Anxious Generation or Always On that I wrote, read something that empowers you to feel confident in your decisions, because that is key. Somebody was at my house once and he was talking about how he can't possibly take away his daughter's smartphone. And one of my children said, well, that's dumb. Don't they know you want to be a good parent? My little one chimed in. And I thought about it and I'm like, I project so much confidence around my choices.
Yeah.
Also, right, the 3 C's, communicate, connect, and consistent boundaries. But they know that I do that in the name of being a good parent.
Right.
And I think that having the confidence to make a decision in that way, that I'm loving and I'm connecting to you and I'm doing this for you and with you, it's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And it will work. It will work. Part
And
of a large world of people who do it. I'm not alone. And it works.
No, you're not. And we're in this together. And I think too, if you're not making the safer choices, I feel like it doesn't make you a bad parent. I just feel like there's a lot of uninformed parents, busy parents, and it's not
overwhelmed. The word I use all the time is overwhelmed. Most parents tell me I am too overwhelmed to do this.
Right.
And that's understandable too.
It's understandable. But what's more important though than our kids and their happiness and their development? You got to make time for it. You got to make time to,
I always say, but that's the job of being a parent.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Shona, thank you so much for this time. Can you tell listeners where they can grab a copy of Always On and then connect with you too?
Absolutely. So Always On is on Amazon. I actually priced it at a pretty low price point, so it should be accessible to everybody. And you can also subscribe to my Substack. Every couple weeks, I send out something. I'll give it to you so you can share it in the notes.
Thank you, Shona. This was an incredible conversation. I think lots of stuff for parents with kids of all ages that they can take away with them today. So I appreciate your dedication to this cause and helping out parents in this space with literally this book has so many tangible guides and worksheets or things that you can fill
activities.
in.
I call it an interactive book. I want you to feel like someone's with you in this.
It's the most interactive I've seen. So I really loved that. And that's probably how a lot of people would like to interact with these books because it is so personalized, this experience to each family. So Shona, thank you again. And we'll be in touch
Thank you for
soon.
having me.